Hey, welcome, and today I will show you how to create these cute little mushrooms that you can turn into earrings or into keychains. They're very easy to make and it will take you about 15 minutes without recording how you did it. So let's get into the video. For this I use some yarn that's not very thick, but you can use anything you like. And this is how you will create that slip knot, that initial one that's going to start everything. I slowed down the video so you can actually see what I'm doing. This is how I always start each and every project. And now I'm going to make a chain of 4. Once I do that, I will make a slip knot into that first chain where we started. And this is how I do it. So you just pull your needle through that first chain space, pull yarn over, pull the yarn through, and then you're going to pull it through that loop. Now right here you can see I'm showing you where you're going to be working your first row. So in this very center you will make 8 single crochets. I'm removing this yarn to the side so it doesn't bother me. And I chain 1. This is just leverage, it doesn't count towards the 8 single crochets I just mentioned. And here we go. 8 single crochets in that center of the loop. This is 2, this is 3, 4, and well, count by yourself. If you want to follow along, it's okay. You can always stop the video and do it and then wait or fast forward, depends on your preferences. Once you have those 8 single crochets, you're going to connect them with a slip stitch right here in that first chain space of that same row. You're going to pull it through and you're going to chain 1, which is just a leverage. We're just using it to be able to have a closed loop, a closed circle. Now for the second circle, we're just going to do 2 single crochets in each chain space. This means that we are going to end up with 16 stitches in the end. So each chain space is going to have 2 single crochets. I've slowed this down a little bit so you can actually follow along, and you just continue working in the same way that we did the previous round, just that you're going to have 2 single crochets in each chain space of the previous row. And here we are. Now I'm just counted how many stitches I have, and this is the fall stitch, so we're skipping that one and going straight into that first stitch that we created when we started this round, and I'm just doing a slip stitch here. And I connect it, and now I chain 1, and as you remember, that's just for leverage. It does not count towards the chains that we made. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go into each space and just do a single crochet. We're going to do 2 rounds of this. So we're going to go all the way in circle and just do a single crochet in each of that chain space. 2 rounds. I just wanted to take advantage of this moment while we're working these 2 rounds to say why we are doing this kind of like finishing the circle. And it's because if we want to change colors, this is going to be the best possible way. If we're going to do a continuous circle, it's going to look like a little snail, and then the color that we change, that we add, is not going to be even. It's not going to have its own row. This way you are going to avoid that, but if you're going to use just a single color like I did, you can obviously continue working continuous circle. Right now you're going to notice that your work is getting a little bit like it's getting domed shape, which is exactly what we want, because we don't need any more width of this circle. So you can turn your work like this because it's going to be a lot easier for you to work, and pay attention to the chain count. So now we have reached the end. There is that fake chain space. We're going to skip it, and we're going to go into that first chain space of the same row, and we're going to slip stitch, and we're going to chain 1 for leverage again. And I did not record the second round because it's the same. This is what you're supposed to have at this point. So now you're going to cut that yarn off, leave a little tail because you will need it later to sew everything together. And right now we're going to start creating the body of the mushroom. So we're going to start in exactly the same way. We're going to create that slip knot, and after that we're going to make chain of 4. After we make that chain of 4, we're going to connect the end to the beginning and create a little loop. And then in the center of that loop, we are going to create 8 single crochets again to create that circle and base for the body. Again, we're going to work in the center. Pay attention to that because that center tends to be a little bit too small. And here we go. We are doing 8 single crochets. And once you've done these 8 single crochets in that circle, you're going to put it together. You're going to connect it with the slip stitch, and then we are going to do the next round a little bit differently. It's not going to be 2 single crochets in each chain space. It's going to be 3 single crochets, 1 single crochet in each chain space, and then on the 4th one we're going to have 2 single crochets in that chain space. So here it's going to be 1, and then in the next one single crochet again, and now we're going to have another single crochet, and in the 4th chain space we're going to have 2 single crochets. This is going to give extra body, it's going to extend it, but it's not going to go wild. Now we're going to again do 3 single crochets in 3 chain spaces. So right here I wanted a little bit more focus. So 1, and then in the next chain space another 1, and in the next chain space we're going to do another single crochet. And now we're going to do 2 single crochets in the next chain space. This will give us a total of 10 single crochets. Remember we had 8 and now we added 2 extra. So now we're going to slip stitch, and we're going to turn our work like this, and now we're going to do 2 rounds of single crochets, just what we did previously. So single crochet in each chain space until the end, and we do 2 rounds of this. Okay, so now we're going to connect again with the slip stitch, and for now you are supposed to have something like this. Now what we're going to do is the decrease row. So we're going to go single crochet in each space for the first 3, and then we're going to do a decrease stitch in the 4th and 5th. So how I do this is I just pick up the front loop of that chain space. As you can see, there are 2. There is like that little V. I don't go through the V completely. I just go with the needle through that first loop, and then I'm going to pick up the second loop from the following chain space, and then I'm going to pull through both of them. And then I'm going to yarn over and pull through those 2 loops. In this way, you're creating a decrease that's not going to be visible, and it's especially good when you're doing something as small as this, because it's easily visible when there is a decrease otherwise. So now I'm going to do the same here. I'm just going to pick up that front loop, and then again the front loop, and I'm going to yarn over and pull through both of those, and then yarn over and pull through 2 of those that are left on the hook. So now I'm going to connect, and now I'm going to do another decrease row because I want it to be a little bit extra skinny, and eventually we will stuff it with some filling. I'm cutting off the excess, that tail. We don't really need that tail, it's just in a way. So now again another row of decrease. It's going to be again on the 3rd stitch. You can do it on the 2nd, it's fine, but then you're just gonna have too big of a decrease, and it might end up being too skinny at the top, so you will not be able to actually put the stuffing in. As for the stuffing, you don't really need to use the pillow stuffing. You can actually try to use something else like scrap fabric, whatever it is that you have, and that's just going to help as well. But the thing is, like, we're going to stuff only the body of the mushroom, and you will see later why. And now you should have something that looks like this, like a little vase. And now I will do a single crochet, 2 rounds of single crochets in each chain space. Okay, so this is the point where we're going to add our stuffing. You can use your scissors, or you can use anything else that you have that can help you actually push this through. And I will use another hook that I have. It's amazing for this. It's always being used for these things. You don't need a lot of stuffing. Don't make it too hard, because you want it to have a little bit of squishiness and to have a little bit of space. So once you do that, you are going to go back into the same, all those chain spaces, but now you're going to do 2 single crochets in each of those spaces, and that's going to create like a little neck. It's going to create like opening in that neck, and it's going to help us connect the dome of the mushroom to the body. So as I said, 2 single crochets in each of these spaces. Okay, I'm having some trouble here. Sometimes the thread can twist. If that happens to you, try to untwist it before you try to continue working, because it can actually really make your work a lot more difficult. So 2 single crochets in each of these spaces. And it's going to create like a little ruffle. I don't know how to call it. And here we are at the end of that row. You can see how it created that little, it looks just like a vase, honestly. If you wanted to add some flowers to this, it would actually be very cute. So right here I was thinking about adding an extra row, but I decided against it. So I just cut off that part, and I secured my work by pulling the thread through and hiding the thread inside. If the thread is too large, too long, just cut it and push it inside of that little body that we just created. Okay, so now we have all the parts, but in order to make it a little bit cuter, this is how we're going to put it together. we are going to add some extra spots on top of that little dome. So I wanted it to be a little bit psychedelic, but it's also very cute. I want it to be colorful, so I'm using a different color yarn, and I'm just cutting off. There is no really a reason why I'm cutting off these long strips. Like, you can cut them shorter, but it's a lot easier to tie a knot, well, 2 knots in this case, if the yarn is a little bit longer. So you're going to create a few of these, as many as you want to, and then you're going to add them on the top of the little dome. So how are we going to do that? You can use a needle that's for these kinds of projects, but I find it a lot easier to do it with the crochet needle, the crochet hook. So you're just going to pull these little bits on the side, these extra little threads of yarn, and then you're going to pull the other part in the next stitch and turn your work inside out and tie the knot. I will always tie 2 knots in order to secure them so they don't fall off, and I advise you do the same, because it is easy for them to untangle if it's just one. Cut off the excess, and that's it. We're not going to be stuffing the dome. If you stuff the dome, it's just going to turn into a little circle and it's not going to look good. So I just continue putting these little dots where I please, where I think I want them. And then after that's done, we're going to take that big needle for the yarn and we are going to sew the dome to the body. And this is what it looks like when I finished adding all the ones that I wanted. And this is also the time when you want to add that little chain if you're creating a keychain. You don't actually need to add the chain for the keychain, but it looks nicer. It adds something extra to the keychain. But if you don't have this little metal chain, you can actually just tie the knot around that hoop for the ring, the key ring, and that's it. So I'm pulling that yarn through, and then I will secure it, make a few knots in one of the stitches below, and that's about it. It's actually that easy to create. And let's get back to putting this together and to see the final result. So to do this, I'm using this big plastic needle, and this big plastic needle is very useful for these kinds of crafts. It cannot poke. It's actually pretty flimsy. It's soft, but it's good enough for these kinds of projects. So what you're going to do is you're going to go through each of these little chain spaces and you're going to put them together. The way I do it, I do not go over, under. I try to stay on in the same row so that I hide these stitches, because if you go over, under, and over and under, you're going to create lines, and to me they do not look good. So what I do, I just go like this underneath those chain spaces, and I catch each stitch, and I repeat. This actually really creates nice effect, especially because you have a lot more stitches on top, on the dome, than you do on the bottom where the body is. And this is the way it's supposed to be. So you just continue this, and then when you reach the end, just secure your work, make a few knots, and try to hide them so that they're not visible. I've sped up this part because it's pretty much self-explanatory, and that's about it. But this is what we get. Like, as you can see, it's a little bit too bulbous, the top, That's why we don't fill it. So we just push it down to create that mushroomy look. But what you can actually do to prevent this from untangling, you can take a little thread, a piece of yarn or whatever. The same color yarn would be the best. And then you can just pull it through like this. You're catching the dome, and you're also catching that little vase neck underneath. And in this way, you're going to prevent this mushroom from going back to that shape that looks like a lamp, honestly. This is totally optional. I find it preferable because whenever I use the other ones that I created, they do have a tendency to untangle, and that's just not looking good. Untangle in terms of the top, the dome, becomes very round. So to prevent this, you're kind of like putting it in place and keeping it in place like this so it can never go up. Once you're done, again, make a few knots and hide the thread, and you're done. So I did not add the keychain ring on top of this one because I'm still not sure what I want this to be. I might make another one and turn them into earrings, or maybe even a necklace. So here are the other ones that I made, and this is what they look like when they have the little those hoops for the earrings and the key ring. They're very cute for gifting, or you can create them to sell. If you like this little tutorial, please give it a like, comment, subscribe, and share. Thank you for watching. Bye bye.